Hi, thanks so much for joining me. So today I'm going to discuss my favorite books from 2022. And I read a lot of middle grade, so I broke everything up into sections, actually three, because I also will be sharing my next pile of books I plan to start reading immediately in 2023. One thing I did differently for my personal reading and my daughter's reading for 2022 is we both did book journals. And my philosophy in this book journal was I only did a book journal on books that I wanted to reread or that I loved. Some of these books are rereads, but I still want to mention them because I don't read a lot of new fiction. I read a lot of classics and I reread a lot of books. And I'm going to link everything I can find. Hopefully the covers won't be different, but I'll try to find. But yeah. So the first book that I really loved in these are in no order. And The Alchemist by Paul Coelho, I'm not sure how to say it. The Alchemist is a classic, and I never read it before. So this was my book journal about it. I kind of just did quick doodles. I didn't put as much effort I've seen other people. I'm kind of some people are really, really, really intricate. I just kind of used a marker and a Sharpie and just kind of, did stuff. But this is, about Santiago. If I'm saying that correctly, hopefully the protagonist, he's all about this boy, let's say boy, I don't know, he's a young adult, and he's searching for his destiny. It's very dreamy, very much about taking risk in life. What risk should you take? What are you, what are you risking? What do your dreams mean? What do you think your destiny means? So I really like this. It's about a journey, and then even the back, it's to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation, from The Alchemist. And then that led me to this. So I did not make a book journal about this book because I do not see myself rereading it. I just wanted to include it just quickly because it's the same author. I went on to read his other work, The Devil and Miss Prim. And it's just this story about good versus evil, about this stranger who goes to this village and poses this question to this young woman. And it's all about greed and fear and it's ask the question, are human beings in essence good or evil? I don't know. I just honestly I just didn't personally connect with the protagonist. It didn't connect with the stranger's motivation or it just didn't do it for me. But I still think it was a good book because I finished it. Would I recommend it to someone? I'm just not sure. Honestly, I don't even know how to explain this book. It's kind of could have been a short story almost. I don't know. I think he's a very talented writer, but The Alchemist is I really love The Alchemist and not this so much, but I just wanted to still include because I did finish it. If I finish, I have a lot of books I don't finish. So the next book is Rebecca and then My Cousin Rachel. So Rebecca I love. Rebecca's the first book, Daphne du Maurier. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name correctly, but Daphne du Maurier. Okay, so Rebecca. Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It has one of my favorite openings of any book I've ever read. Manderley is the mansion that the protagonist, which is the narrator, who goes unnamed. I thought that the author was so genius in doing that because there was so much thought that went behind why the narrator is unnamed. The narrator is unnamed because the book is all about Rebecca, who is the first wife, and the narrator is the second wife. And so of course it deals with jealousy, love, bitterness, yet not in a way. I don't know. And then it's all about him. It's kind of all about this man who is Maxim. And then I don't know if you call it the house, the main person who runs the house. I forgot her title, but Mrs. Danvers. She's a quite interesting character. It had very interesting characters. It had a very interesting plot. It has mystery to it because it definitely surprised me. It's a classic, but like I said, I had never read it until 2022. And I really love this book, really recommend it. I definitely will be rereading this book. So after I read Rebecca, I really wanted to read more of her work. And so I read My Cousin Rachel. I didn't do a book journal on it because I honestly don't see myself rereading this, but it was good enough for me to finish it. because like I said, I do not finish books I don't like. And the writing was really good. I just didn't feel connected to the protagonist. I did not really feel I really didn't. I mean, I don't know if anybody likes Rachel, but I didn't like Rachel. I didn't really like I don't have to like a protagonist, you know what I mean? But it's like I just didn't really care that much about like what was gonna happen to anyone involved in this book. It's also about this estate and these two rich men who both are obsessed. Well, not obsessed. One of them marries Rachel, which is his cousin, like distant cousin. And then his other family member, who is his heir, is, you know, I don't want to give too much away, like gets kind of interested in Rachel. I don't know. I just don't think I'll reread it, but I still think it was good. So the next book I have is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. So this book is about Eleanor, who is, I guess you could pretty much say, an introvert, a loner. She's very socially awkward. I don't want to say too much about why, but you find out very much like why she is the way she is. And she struggles, you know, with social skills, and it's very good. The writing's very developed, and you feel like she's like a real person. And it's also very deep. It deals with like things that she's dealing with her past, with her family, and then, you know, connections that she makes throughout the book with other people. So it has like a very hopeful vibe to it. So I like how it's broken up in sections. The biggest section in the beginning is like good days, and then like it's like has a small section towards the end that says bad days, and then at the very end, it's like better days. And so so I really loved it. Like I said, she's very quirky. The writing is since it's modern fiction, the writing flows. It's a very easy read, and it's just, like I said, very interesting about human connections, and I really loved it. And this was my journal entry about it. Eleanor, Raymond, Sammy, my favorite characters. One of the quotes from the book is, "You don't miss what you've never had." And like I said, you know, yeah, so I really recommend this book too. I think a lot of different people would like this book. Okay, so a reread for me, and of course is my favorite book of all time, is Jane Eyre. I'm not going to talk too much about this because, you know, if you have not read Jane Eyre, I recommend you read it. Like, just go, stop what you're doing and read it. It's like, to me, one of the best books ever written, and it's, you know, about an orphan and all of her, like, pretty much from childhood all the way until she's like a young adult, if not like, you know, in her 20s or whatever. And it's about like love and like, you know, class and being treated a certain way because of your situation. Like, she's a very strong character, strong female character, and she goes through a lot in her life. So yeah, and then this was my journal entry for it. You know, Jane, Mr. Rochester, Adele, I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. That's one of my favorite quotes of all time by Charlotte Bronte. Okay, yeah. So, another reread for me this year. Actually, I read this, I don't know, I think either at the end of 2021 or at the beginning of 2022. But I really want to reread it, and it was The Language of Flowers, and I definitely will get her name wrong. This is my entry for it. This one's kind of cluttered, but it's like connections. Victoria is the main character, and then it deals with another character called Elizabeth, and then Grant. And so over time we would learn each other, and I would learn to love her like a mother loves a daughter, imperfectly and without roots. That's one of the quotes from the book. And, you know, it's about trust and love and revenge. So the main character in this book deals with trauma, and she has these like attachment issues, and I think she has like an attachment disorder. And so she really connects through the world with flowers. And there's this whole language of flowers where they have like these Victorian books written on that, and how different flowers have different meanings. And she's all about that. And it was really fun to kind of go into that world, even though like I'm not a huge like flower person, but just to find, and then even at the end, let's see, at the end it has like her flower dictionary or whatever, where she made her own Victoria's Dictionary of Flowers, where it has like each name of each flower and what it means. The book is beautiful. It's like, it's so well written. The language is beautiful. It's one of my favorite books, and I reread it in 2022, and I wanted to share it. And it does kind of also remind me a little bit of Jane Eyre. And of this next book, which is another one of my favorites, is White Oleander. I reread this book. Sometimes I like reread books just to like trick myself, not to trick myself, like test myself, to say, oh, like you really love this book in like whatever, like, you know, like the whole decade of the 2000s, the beginning. So are you going to still love it now? I have continued loving White Oleander, and this is my journal entry for it. It's by Janet Finch. Astrid's the main character, the protagonist, and I believe it's first person perspective of Astrid, and it's beautifully written. It is based in California, and Astrid is living in a series of foster homes. Her mom is Ingrid, a brilliant poet, in prison for murder, and her daughter, like I said, yeah, she goes through a series of foster homes. So yeah, it's like each has its own universe with its own laws, its own dangers, its own hard lessons to be learned. Becomes a redeeming and surprising journey of self-discovery. So this book, very much so, like every foster home that she's in is like very much its own world, and you like go through that with her, and it's just such an interesting book. Like one of the most interesting books I've ever read on the mother-daughter dynamic and relationship. Obviously, it's a very dysfunctional relationship, and you learn all these things about that. Okay. So the next book I read in 2022 was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. So Great Expectations was such a long read for me. It is very, very dense, very, very detailed. The language is just, you know, when it was written, it was so long ago. Not that Jane Eyre isn't old. So it was written in the 1800s, and there are so many words that are used that I'm just not familiar with. It even has like a word, like in the notes, it actually has like meanings of a lot of the words. You know, it was based in London, mostly. So it's all about Pip. So in the beginning, so Pip again is an orphan. He's being raised by his sister and his sister's husband in the beginning of the novel. And then it's called Great Expectations because it's all about the expectations that you have in life about yourself, about what you expect from other people, and about what you get, what you give, what you receive. It's kind of like a coming of age story. And I'm not going to go too much into it because it's a classic. A lot of people probably read it before, but I never read any Dickens before 2022. And like I said, it took me forever to read it because it was such a slow read, but I'm so glad I finished it. I was so happy when I finished it. It was probably my biggest accomplishment reading wise, not because of the length, because I've read books that were bigger than this, like The Goldfinch. Like The Goldfinch is like 700 pages, and it took me less time to read than this. I read The Goldfinch and The Secret History for the first time in 2022, and they're two of my favorite books of all time, especially The Goldfinch. Really, The Goldfinch. The Secret History was just a really good reading experience that I definitely will reread. So The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. The Goldfinch is probably like very like neck and neck with Jane Eyre. The Goldfinch, she dresses so cool. Every photograph I see of her is Donna Tartt. And she was born in Mississippi. And so I want to say, so this is like 766 pages. Definitely not like a short read, but her writing, since it's modern, you know, it flows to me way more than Dickens. So I'm going to read. So it begins with a boy, Theo Decker, a 13-year-old New Yorker, miraculously survives an accident that kills his mother. She tells you right in the beginning, and even on the dust jacket, it's like she's not trying to shock you, that his mother is killed. And he's abandoned by his father. He's taken in by the family of a wealthy friend. So Theo ends, like, you go, same thing. It's like coming of age. Like, you experience from the very beginning when Theo loses his mother up until he goes live with his family. Then, like I said, and it says in the beginning, he's abandoned by his father. And so that trauma that he has just from that one event where he lost his mother, and then like being raised pretty much as an orphan too, like without his mother, who was like pretty much everything to him. It's very sad, but yet it's like, I don't know how to explain. Like, it's very sad, but then the details are so rich, and like she writes like no other writer I've ever saw, where it almost kind of feels like you're watching a documentary on paper. So yeah, it's like the art of growing up, the trauma of loss is what I wrote. It's beautiful to me. It's about friendship, disappointment, grief. The title of this book is Painting the Goldfinch, which plays a prominent role, in the plot. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. I can see why I believe it won the Pulitzer. Okay, now The Secret History. So The Secret History is about a group of friends, a group of college students, Richard, Henry, Francis, Bunny, and then the twins, these twins, Camilla and Charles. And so they're studying Greek at this university, and the main protagonist, like, he doesn't really feel like he fits in. He's from California, and most, if not all, of the other students are from the East Coast. They all pretty much have money, grew up with money. Most of them, if not, or they seem to have wealth, and he's not like that, but then he wants to fit in with them, and so it's kind of like that theme was interesting to me, about like the different, like, dealing with class and things like that, and like fooling people, getting involved with certain people because you kind of feel like have like a facade. It's like the main protagonist, who is Richard, did not like really like any of the characters, but yet you still are very involved and interested in reading it because she's such a good writer. And more about their personal reflection or non-personal reflection or remorse about what happened, versus to me than like the crime itself. Yeah, and that's my book journal about it. Okay, so this one's kind of different. It's not a novel, and I didn't do a book journal about it because it's so short. So this is a series, and it's called Griffin and Sabine. And also, this will be in one of the next sections I'll show you guys. But I bought the second one to go with it. It's a trilogy. And I bought Sabine's notebook. That's one of my Christmas gifts to myself. And this is very interesting. Like I said, I didn't do a book journal about it because it's not a novel. It's like it's kind of like an adult interactive picture book. And it's very quirky. It's the strange and intriguing correspondence between Griffin and Sabine. Each page, so basically it's this artist or illustrator named Griffin, and he creates this work, these like different artworks, and then this woman named Sabine starts writing letters to him. And so basically, it's kind of like questioning how she knows who he is and how she knows all these things about his artwork. So it kind of like has like a mystery aspect to it. And then you get to like read the letter, as you would picture Griffin read. Like, this is like a letter she wrote to Griffin. I've never seen anything like this, like as far as for adults. I don't even know how I found this, but I'm really excited to continue reading the trilogy. And yeah, it was very interesting. The artwork was really cool. You get to see her artwork and then his artwork. Hers and then his, vice versa. And that's very interesting. And they both talk about their artwork and about, possibly, their interactions with each other and their correspondence. So yeah, that was one of my favorite books of 2022. So this book, I did a whole video on this book. I actually did some other video. I did videos on Donna Tartt. This is The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows by John Koenig. This is this author, John, who made up his own words that are very poetic, and the definitions that go along with it. I made a whole video on this too if you want to check that out. And then he has some like kind of longer descriptions, and then they have like really interesting artwork in here. Sorry. It's something that you can just pull out and read like one word a day, or like a little. But that's what I've been doing, and I'm rereading it again right now. I read the whole thing, and then I'm rereading it again in very small parts. Like I'll sometimes just read one word a day. Let me just pick a random one. Lock-heartedness, the atmosphere of camaraderie when people are stuck together in a certain place. A stalled elevator, a shelter during a storm. The sleeper car of a train, which leaves them no other option but to be present with each other, with nowhere else to go and nobody else to be. It's very artsy, very interesting. One more before I start the middle grade fiction. Okay, Piranesi. I made a whole video on this. It's probably just a rambly mess because I don't know, I just get in ramble messes. But this book was very hard for me to describe, but I really wanted to make a video on it. I don't have a physical copy of it because honestly, it's one of the best books I ever read. At the same time, I'm like terrified of it. I don't know if I want a copy of it and if I want to reread it, but it's one of still the best books I ever read. Xana Clark. It's about Piranesi, who, that's the name we're given of him. It's first person, very bizarre. It's like she creates this world of these of this labyrinth, and it kind of is like underlying themes of like Greek mythology. There's all these crazy statues in this house that Piranesi is living in the beginning of the book, or is he living in it? Like it kind of, there's the other, there's other characters that Piranesi encounters, and then it's like, what is peace? Isolation, loneliness, mental health, possibly Piranesi, was he kidnapped? Like, was he not? Is he in this like mental physical prison of this, like these architectural ruins? It's this other world. How do you get to it? Is it physical? Is it not physical? Is it in his head? Yeah, that's the end of my adult books. Now my middle grade fiction. Okay, so for 2022, I read The Wild Robot and The Wild Robot Escapes. This robot, it's about this robot's life. He gets kind of put in this nature area, and he has to survive in the wilderness. And it's all about his life, or her, Roz, when she's alone on this island, and she has all these friendships and interactions with the animals, and it's like very, like, what's what I'm looking for? Like, it's just very like sweet, and yet at the same time there is some kind of mysterious aspect to it, because you're kind of like, will she end up staying like in these woods? And so it has like these cool illustrations. I don't know, I just thought it would be, I just didn't think I would like it. I was just kind of judging it because it dealt with a robot. And I read a lot of realistic fiction, if you can't tell. So I really, really love The Wild Robot. I really see why my daughter liked it. I can see why a lot of kids would like it. I think it would make a good read aloud, and I enjoyed it as an adult. And like I said, it's just about a sweet story about this robot and the relationships he creates and makes with these other creatures. And I will say that it doesn't help that he's very, she is raw. Sorry, I keep saying he. She's a very kind robot. And it's like, oh, like this was refreshing. Like after reading some other darker books, I really enjoyed it. And then the second one, of course, very, very good. And I think he also is coming out with a third. Hopefully I'm not wrong, but I think he is. Okay. So the next book is a series, and I made a whole video on this too, so I'm not going to go too much into it. If you want to check that out on my channel, all 6, I just included these, kind of as one book because I really enjoyed the entire series, and that was The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. I've talked about this book many times if you watched my channel before, by Mary Rose Wood. Kind of reminds me of Jane Eyre. Yeah, because she's a governess. The main protagonist is a governess, and there's these 3 kids that are found in the woods. So the whole series, you have to read the whole series to find out the whole story of why these kids were in the woods. So that kind of like engages you and motivates you to want to read the entire series. I definitely think the first 4 were the best by far, but I wanted to continue reading, of course, to find out every single thing. And you kind of are given a lot of like hints, because this is written for kids, of course, and I'm reading it as an adult. Even though you kind of have a feeling of what's going on, it was still enjoyable to read. And it's very quirky. Yeah, really enjoyed that. And then another 2-part is Pax and Pax's Journey Home by Sarah Pennypacker. So another really sweet story about the friendship between a fox and a boy, Peter and Pax. And there are things that end up separating them. And then so the whole series is about, I say series, it's 2 parts. I don't know if there's gonna be a third, but as of now, it's just 2. And it's like 1 chapter told from Peter's perspective. Also has some really interesting illustrations by John Klassen. 1 chapter is told from Peter's perspective, and then the next is Pax. So it's all about what Pax is doing at that moment, what Peter's doing at that moment, and are they gonna reunite? Are they not? What's gonna happen with this fox? What's gonna happen with Peter? They're both going through things, both in their lives, and because Peter had to move away from the fox. They're separated. And yeah, so it's a very sweet story. And then this was a reread. Pretty much every year since I started reading Kate DiCamillo, I like to reread her pretty often. And I got busy in 2022. I was just like reading other books. So this year I reread The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo. And it's like definitely my top 3 books by her. It's about a mouse. I don't know if you consider this middle grade or a chapter book. But I wanted to include it because I enjoyed it just as much, if not more. This is probably my 3rd time I read it in 2022. And so it's about a mouse, and it's about a princess, and it's about a girl named Migiri So, sorry. And so it also deals with like class and like trauma and being mistreated by your own family members, and yet overcoming that, like overcoming courage. It's every word she uses is perfectly placed. Kate DiCamillo does not use too few words or too many. Her writing is very, very nicely edited. She's really talented, and she's really good at having you connect with almost every character. Like almost all of her characters, they're not all likable, but it's just very much about like universal themes, love and forgiveness and like bravery and finding out who you are, coming of age, like just all of those like classic things. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. I just showed on my Instagram that they're actually making a short film that will be on Apple Plus, and I definitely will be checking that out. It's so beautiful. It's very philosophical. We often wait for kindness, but being kind to yourself can start now, said the mole. So it's just filled with just beautiful little sayings like that. And it's my favorite picture book, maybe of all time. So now these are in my TBR, my to be reads TBR pile for 2023. Okay, so I already showed you guys this book. This is the second part in Sabine's notebook. And so I'm really excited to start that in 2023. It will continue with the letters that they wrote to each other. And then I will be really excited also in 2023 to read the third one. This one's middle grade. This is Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling. And oh yeah, I also wanted to mention, that this is by Nick Bantock. Okay, so this The truth is, Avon was born without arms, but at age 13 that hasn't stopped her from doing almost anything. Then her parents take a job running Stagecoach Pass, a rundown western theme park in Arizona, and Avon has to leave everything she knows behind. Struggle to make friends at her new school, where the kids can't seem to look past her missing arms. So, this book I thought just sounded really interesting, of course, because the protagonist is dealing with significant physical issues, and I just really like books where people or characters are dealing with things like that. And so I just thought it could be a really interesting read. So that will be one of my reads. And then The Princess and the Goblin, which is a classic by George MacDonald. I never read this book. This is like in my daughter's pile also for 2023. But I just kind of opened it up, and I actually ended up just reading one whole chapter. I was just checking it out, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and try it. And it's like a princess, and then it deals with, I don't know, these like goblins that live below the mountain, and supposedly with the help of Irene the princess, can they stop the goblins' terrifying plans? And it also talks about Labyrinth, which reminded me of Piranesi, which Piranesi deals with the labyrinth, and I kind of want to stay away from Labyrinth, but this is totally different, so I think I'll try it. And then I want to reread Kate DiCamillo's The Magician's Elephant. This is one of her books I actually only read once. My daughter and I read it as a read aloud, so I want to go ahead and reread it. And it's about kind of same thing. It deals with universal themes of like loss and missing home and an orphan. As you can tell, I like reading about orphans. So Peter's an orphan. And yeah, so it's about Peter the orphan and this poor elephant. Shady Hollow. So this is a murder mystery, but I don't read murder mysteries, but it deals with animals. So it's like by Juno Black, which I think Juno Black is like two authors that are under that name. So basically it's a murder mystery, but it's an animal murder mystery. I've never seen anything like this. And I love animal stories. So I thought, since it deals with animal murder, that I wouldn't be too scared. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. And yeah, and I think it's a series, it's a series, and I haven't found a series to get into after The Incorrigible Children, so I'm hoping I'll like this. And it sounds really interesting about the murder. It's, like I said, a murder mystery about a group of animals living in this area, like this town. And they have to investigate this murder and find out who did it, like dealing with like a fox and all these different animals. So it sounds really interesting. An animal murder mystery. And then, because I've been obsessed with Charles Dickens, it took me forever to finish Great Expectations, but I want to read more because I see why he's such, like, named so much. Like, he really is a really good writer. This is Oliver Twist, a classic, so I want to go ahead and try it. And then Beloved, I've shown this book or mentioned it before, but I really put it at the top of my pile for 2023 by Toni Morrison. I've started this book twice from the library and just never finished it. It is dark, and it deals with some serious, obviously, topics, but yet the writing's beautiful. And I just never finished it, and I want to. Okay, so this is, I think, this is my only nonfiction book. This is Anxiety, Meditations of the Anxious Mind by the School of Life. School of Life, there's like a main philosopher that founded this school. It's like, I think it's like Alan de Botton or de Botton, something like that. I don't know if it says his name in here, but okay, so let's see. It doesn't say his name in here, but I think he created the School of Life. I have other books by the School of Life, and this is just, really, I love the cover. Hopefully you can see it pretty good on camera. I don't know hopefully the lighting's kind of in and out, but it's just a book about anxiety. How could we be anything but? And yeah, so it talks about varieties of anxiety and an ideal life for the anxious at the end. And it has like, the school of life usually has like really interesting graphics, like very artsy for like if you want to call it like a self-help book. So I started reading it already. So I said 2023 because I'm putting it aside, because I'll show you guys at the end what I'm reading now. So I put it aside and I'm going to continue it at the beginning of 2023. And here is a Pulitzer Prize winner, Olive Kitteridge, yeah, by Elizabeth Strout. So I started this one too, just to see if I liked the writing enough, and I did. So I'm going to continue it in 2023. Oliver Kitteridge, a retired school teacher, deplores the changes in her town of Crosby, Maine, in a world at large, but she doesn't always recognize the changes in those around her. So far it starts where I'm not sure if each chapter is like a different description of her by someone else. I'm not sure, because in the beginning it starts from the perspective of her husband. And so I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do, because I just started it. Like I say, the author, Elizabeth. But so far, like, we are introduced to her from her husband. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. But I'm interested to see why it won a Pulitzer. I like reading like prize award books, especially Pulitzers, because I'm like, even if I don't like the book, I like to say like, why do you think it won a Pulitzer? Like what, like, so yeah, I'm going to check it out. The Murderer's Ape. Yeah, it's like I showed this book before in a haul, but I haven't started yet, by Jacob Wegelis. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but this is YA, and it is told from the perspective of Sally Jones, who is a gorilla, and she understands humans, but I don't think she can speak. So, like, I think you find out, like, I think Sally Jones was, like, captured when the gorilla was, like, captured when she was a baby, which is, like, very, very sad. So I want to say, like, I think she was, like, raised in captivity because she was, like, captured from her mom probably, or something like that, which, obviously deals with the theme of, like, animal abuse. But I don't know if we go into that. I think it's more from the perspective of her, but then what happens to her, I don't know if it's like her boss or friend, and I think she wants to like rescue him or try to prove that he didn't do it or something. I don't know how it ended up among people. I must have been very small when it happened. My first memory is sitting on a cold stone floor with a chain around my neck. It just seems interesting. Like, I like books told from the perspective of an animal. Like, I like that. Okay. So I think this is the last, I have like one more book after this. This is Michael Faber, The Crimson Petal and the White. Just the title of this book drew me in. I was like, that sounds so interesting. It kind of sounds like a fairy tale, that fairy tale about like the rose. So this is based in London in the 1870s. And this is like very, very much an adult book. Like, it's definitely not YA or anything like that. And it just sounds interesting. It's about like, I think someone said it reminded them also a smidge, obviously much darker, but a smidge about like Jane Eyre, or I don't know if he was influenced by Jane Eyre or something like that. But yeah, it's a Victorian novel based in that time period. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. Last book I have to show you guys is A Christmas Carol, which I'm currently reading right now. But thankfully, unlike Great Expectations, it is only 130 something pages. What's brilliant about this copy is it has his original manuscript, Charles Dickens' original manuscript, on the left. Now, I'm not reading it because it's very, it's very hard to see. He wrote it like, I think probably in like a quill pen, and what he had back then. And it's just interesting to see like his original editing. Like, of course, he didn't have whiteout. He wasn't using a computer. He wasn't like using a typewriter. He was literally like scratching out and writing other words, and it's very interesting how they have it page by page, his original versus what is in print, and it's almost, it's print. I looked at some of it, and it's like exactly, so this is like a pure, like, it's like, wow, this is original. Of course, not that books aren't, but you never know. I mean, some, especially older books, people admittedly change them or whatever, but like I said, I'm not sitting here reading both. But it was interesting to see it visually, and then I read a little bit, and I like to see how he, it shows you how he thinks. Sorry if you can hear my dog snoring. Okay, so yeah, so I'm reading A Christmas Carol. I'm filming this video at the beginning of December, and this is like my Christmas read. And yeah, so that's it. And this will be my last book that I'm reading in 2022, and then I'm going to take a break and then start the books I just showed you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate if people like this video, subscribe, and especially, of course, watching. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a good day or night. Bye.